You're tuned to Indie Radio, where independent voices take center stage. This is the Spotlight Music Edition, presented by Indie Radio and hosted by Kinte. Each episode we shine a light on the artist behind the sound, plus interviews with singers and musicians, plus the producers, writers, engineers, managers, and tastemakers who make the music world move. We'll dive into stories from the studio to the stage and talk real music topics with guests both inside the business and passionate voices outside it. Insights, inspiration, and the soundtrack of now. All right here. And now here is your program, the Spotlight Music Edition, with your host Kinte on Indie Radio.
Hello and welcome to an episode, the first episode of the Spotlight Music Edition. I am your host, Kinte, all the way live from Los Angeles, California, and I'm joined by my wonderful and talented co-host, Grayson. How you doing, Gray?
It's movie time, so I'm actually really happy. It's like, if y'all remember me and miss that, it's like we'll be back very shortly.
All right, all right. Okay. I'm so glad. Now, we are blessed. And I'm so sorry. As soon as the show started, somebody's alarm is going off next door. So hopefully they'll take care of that soon. So please, I don't know if you can hear my background. But we are blessed to have a talented filmmaker who's going to talk about a brand new documentary that she has. And we are joined by the wonderful Eva Fuentes. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Yeah, sorry about my, all of a sudden, this alarm's been going off early in the morning.
We can't hear it.
Oh, cool. All right. Then good. It's so annoying. Thank you so much for coming on this program. And we're going to talk about your documentary, Goodbye Horses, and the Mystery of Q Lazzarus. Mm-hmm. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about yourself. Where are you from originally?
I grew up in Mexico City, but I moved to the United States when I was 18, and I'm currently based in New York. I came here to go to film school at NYU, and I kind of have stayed here. It's hard to leave New York, but I still do a lot of work in Mexico. Of 6 feature films that I've directed, 4 I made there. So.
All right.
What parts of Mexico do you like shooting in?
Sorry?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What parts of Mexico do you like shooting in?
Well, all over. It really depends on the project. I did one horror film that was set in Chiapas, which is the southernmost state, bordering Guatemala. I did 3 docs there, one in Mexico City about street kids in Mexico City, one about the Santa Muerte cult that was mostly filmed in Mexico City as well. And then one about a family in Zacatecas in the north who have hypertrichosis. So they're very hairy. They call them the wolf people. Sort of a portrait of that family. So it just depends on the project, especially if it's a documentary. It's sort of wherever your protagonist subjects are based. But shooting in Mexico is great because you have wonderful locations and also just very interesting stories. Yeah.
Now, were you one of those people that grew up always loving film and wanting to be a filmmaker? Or at what point did you realize that's what your calling was?
I always loved film, but I grew up in a family of writers, more literary family. And I also really loved... when I was a little girl, I wanted to be a painter. But then when I got older, I couldn't really draw what I envisioned in my head, and it was sort of frustrating. So I realized maybe I wasn't meant to be a painter. But I really loved the visual arts, painting, photography. I loved film. I loved music. I loved writing and reading. So for me, film I couldn't really decide which of the medium I wanted to work in because I liked all of them. And then I realized film would be a perfect way of sort of combining all of them, writing and the visual arts and music and sound. So it was really, it was the art form or the medium that felt the most complete to me. or less limited. Yeah.
What is the film industry like in Mexico? Because we've had a lot of great talent come out of Mexico, definitely recently, who've done some pretty amazing stuff. But what is it like, the films that are made there?
I mean, the film industry in Mexico has really flourished. A lot of it is because the government, there's a lot of government support for film. There's a film institute that's run by the government, and they also give tax breaks to filmmakers for movies there. So any company paying taxes in Mexico can give up to 10% of what it owes the SAT, which is the equivalent to the IRS, to a film instead of giving it to the government. So most of the films are financed that way, whether they're fiction or documentary, and they also have that same structure or setup for distribution. So it really keeps the film industry kind of afloat, as opposed to here where there's really very little, the NEA, like all those sort of, there's very little government support for not just filmmakers but artists. In Canada, I know, Grayson, the government also is, really supports
Limited
the
to-
filmmakers a lot, and
Yes.
you look at like Adam Agoyan's early films and David Cronenberg's early films, which were, I mean, I love them, but they were pretty out there and they were financed by the government, which would never happen here in the US, but yeah.
Very true. And also in terms of that, it's like, with Canada, the way that it works, it's like they will finance anybody but in Canada. If you're Canadian, it's like, unless it's a Canada theme, but it's like in Mexico, does that have the same thing? It's like, with regards to that, it's like, that it has to have something Mexico related.
Yeah, it has to. Yeah. I mean, it has to be usually shot in Mexico, and I think, like for the tax break money, I forget what the percentage is, but, I think 60-70% has to be sort of the crew has to be Mexican. Like the money has to be spent in Mexico,
See, which also is kind of really super interesting because it's like, it's actually showing pride within the country itself, or it's like, it's a very strange industry in Canada, and its way of doing the same thing. It's kind of again, having the pride, but the American, they take a more American approach, Canadianized, so to speak.
I don't know if you guys remember Strange Brew, but Bob and Doug McKenzie, the characters. They were characters first on SCTV, and the reason why they were born was because the Canadian government was saying, you don't have nothing that's real Canadian, enough Canadian, too Canadian. So they made the most ridiculous Canadian characters, and they took off, and that's how those characters came to be, which I always thought was a funny story.
How is the documentary industry, by the way, in Mexico, as opposed to like how popular is that as opposed to around the rest of the world, where it's like, I know that it's more getting more widespread.
I mean, it's a very large industry now, in the sense that there's a lot of documentaries being made in Mexico, because there's really interesting stories and there's a lot of access, and it's very cheap to make documentaries. I personally have also found, as a woman, that it's hard to get financing for fiction projects in Mexico. It's still a very patriarchal, kind of male-dominated industry, the narrative film industry there. So for a lot of female filmmakers, you can make documentaries because you don't really need that much money. You don't need anyone's permission or green light. You can just go and do it. And, there's great documentaries being made by female filmmakers there. I mean, also narrative films, but less so. There's not a huge audience for documentary films in Mexico, but it's growing. It's more and more people are watching documentaries there. But you know, the average Mexican, which I think would probably be true in most countries in the world. The average Mexican, if they go to a movie, they're not only going to go see a fiction film, but it's probably going to be a Hollywood film. You know, it's not going to be a documentary film. It's not going to be an art house film either. But my first documentary, Children of the Street, which I made in 2003, was nominated for 2 Mexican Academy Awards. One was for Best Documentary and one was for Best First Film. And that was the first year that they had a documentary category, which is 2003 or 4.
Very cool.
Yeah. So it's really a new, like, it's a genre that people have been making docs for like the past 20 years. But before that, it really wasn't a thing in Mexico at all. Yeah.
Mm.
So it really is emerging.
Mm-hmm.
So which brings us to also, it's kind of exciting with our topic that we're diving into today. It's
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
I actually have the trailer. If you don't mind, I'm gonna play your trailer, and then we'll talk about it. All right, here we go.
When you go after your dream, there's nothing like it. It's good times and it's bad times, but there's nothing like it. I became a taxi driver because of my lifestyle, but I was going to sing.
Now here we are in the club area, and on my left-hand side I have our resident dome Svengali, Q Lazzarus, who also contributed to the soundtrack of that much-acclaimed movie, Silence of the Lambs.
Jonathan walked in and he told me that he'd met you when she was driving and said, "You got to hear this, Eddie," and it was Goodbye Horses.
The rock industry in the United States, they weren't ready for a black rock and roll singer. When I went to London, I had to develop my band.
I've never seen a presence on stage like it before.
They couldn't be pigeonholed anywhere.
I don't care how much good music I put out there, they were not listening.
When she disappeared, it was a big loss to everybody.
So in addition to being a filmmaker, I used to DJ a lot, and one of the songs I used to always play was Goodbye Horses.
In 2019, I called a car service and struck up a conversation with the driver. Within minutes, I started to suspect that she was Q Lazzarus.
We're doing this documentary to let you know what went wrong and what happened. The truth. Right up in here, on the back side of these trees right here, is where I slept. How do you feel about that, son?
I want to see some justice. You know, she was on her way to being something major. And now I hear her singing more often. And it's about time.
The music still, to this day, dwells in my heart. Goodbye Horses, that's the real Q Lazzarus, y'all. Don't say I'm not.
Wow. You know, I have to say, I watched the documentary last night. We talked a little bit about this, and the documentary is fantastic. You should be definitely proud of the work that you did.
Thank you.
I want to go into. You kind of talk. It's kind of in the trailer, and I know you've talked about this a bunch of times, but talk a little bit about how this all came about, because one thing that's interesting is the way that she came on the scene was very similar into the way that she met you, which I find just so interesting. Like, you can't write that, you know what I'm saying? Like, like you would think that if somebody made this into a movie, a fictional movie, you would be like, nah, that wouldn't have happened. But can you talk about, Jonathan Demme piece, and then how you came?
Yeah, so Q was, living in New York City in the 80s, in the East Village, making music. And driving a yellow taxi to make ends meet. And one evening she picked up Jonathan Demme and another guy he was with, producer Arthur Baker. And Arthur Baker got out of the car at some point, and her and Jonathan Demme continued talking, and she was playing her music. And he said, "Oh, what is this? Like, I really like it." And she said, "Oh, it's me." And she wound up sending a tape. He gave her his card, and she wound up sending a tape to his office. And then he wound up using her music in his next 4 films, which was Something Wild, Married to the Mob, Silence of the Lambs, and Philadelphia. So in Silence of the Lambs, so he used the song Goodbye Horses twice, first in Married to the Mob, and then in Silence of the Lambs in the famous Buffalo Bill scene. And then in Philadelphia, she actually appears singing in a party scene. So she has a cameo. So every film, she kind of had a larger role, or her music did. But she wasn't able to get a record deal, and she went to London for like 7-8 years, and she had a rock band there, and she wasn't really able to get a record deal there either. And then she came back to the States in the early 90s to be in Philadelphia in the movie, and then she kind of vanished shortly after that. Her best friend, her collaborators, no one really knew what had happened to her. Cut to 2019, so 25 years later. I was a fan of the song, also discovered it watching Silence of the Lambs, and I used to DJ a lot, and I'd play that song. And I knew a little bit about her. I knew she'd been a taxi driver in the 80s. I knew she'd disappeared. And I called an Uber to go from Brooklyn, where I live, to Manhattan. And my driver was an African-American woman, sort of in her late 50s. And she was playing Neil Young, the album Harvest. She had a whole collection of CDs there. And we started talking, and there were several clues, but basically, halfway through the ride, I started to suspect, could this be Q Lazzarus? She was the right age. I knew she'd been a driver in the past. Maybe there was something, maybe I recognized her voice on some subconscious level. She obviously knew about music. She had a whole CD collection there. She wasn't just listening to the radio. She had her own music, and maybe one of the biggest clues too was her GPS wasn't working, and she mentioned she lived in Staten Island. She got lost and said, "Oh, sorry, I don't know my way around here. I live in Staten Island." And I had read an article a few months earlier in Dazed and Confused where they were trying to find her, and they said, well, there's a Diane Lucky, that was, her real name, who lives in Staten Island. So I just started to say, could this be Q? And then, I asked her if about Q Lazzarus, and she kind of changed the subject. But then at the end of the ride, she turned and held out her hand and said, "Nice to meet you, Eva. I'm Q." So Jonathan Demme and I both met her sort of as passengers in her car, 32 years apart. Two filmmakers, one who really helped her start her career, and then me, who sort of, I guess, helped tell her story, But
do you believe in?
But
fate?
yeah, it's very it's very telling of the experiences she had with the music industry, which were very frustrating. That it was really two filmmakers, who were really into music, who tried to help her much more than anyone in the music industry did.
Do you believe in fate?
I do, yes. And we both felt that our meeting was fated. She had a dream also. She had a dream right after she picked me up. She had a dream that she was performing on stage with her band, and I was there. And she called me the next day and said, I had a dream last night. You were there. And she said, if there's something I learned from my dead mama, it's to not ignore signs from God. So we both really felt, that it was sort of meant the universe brought us together. Yeah.
Yeah. Now this is 2019, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how long after that car ride, the initial car ride, did you meet with her and then start making the documentary?
So when she confessed at the end of the ride that she was Q Lazzarus, I said, I'm a fan. Can I take you out for like cocktails or lunch or something? She said, let me think about it. Give me your number. So I put my number in her phone. She went on her way. She called me the next morning to tell me she'd had the dream. And then we met for lunch. I think it was probably later that week, maybe 2 days later or something, 3 days later. And I told her I was a filmmaker, and she started telling me about her life. Obviously, the sort of when we started getting to know each other and when we started filming, it was very much about, her 10 years as Q Lazzarus when she was making music, which was 85 to 95. And then much later, it sort of got into what happened during her disappearance and all the other stuff. But we started filming. We met August 1st. We started filming in September. So,
oh wow,
yeah,
quick.
it was like a few weeks later or a month later. I think she wanted to sort of, clean up her house a bit and prepare mentally, and all her stuff, all her music, all her photographs, her archival, her flyers. It was all in storage. She had to go like looking for it because she hadn't looked at any of it for 25 years. She just sort of put it away and really not engaged with it at all.
Just as a side note, do you still take the taxi?
Sorry?
Do you still take taxi service?
Sometimes, yeah.
Is there another part of you
mostly
that's like maybe I might find some, you never know.
Well, I always when I do take cars, if I'm alone, I always chat with the driver,
Mhm.
Oh, sorry, that's
No, that's okay. We love it.
I do always chat with the driver. I think it's very strange to be in a car with somebody for, for several minutes, for 20 minutes or something, and not talk at all. Oh my God, sorry.
It's okay.
That's all right.
I think I have to open the door.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead. While you're doing that, we'll replay the trailer. Give you time.
When you go after your dream, there's nothing like it. It's good times and it's bad times, but there's nothing like it. I became a taxi driver because of my lifestyle, but I was going to sing.
Now here we are in the club area, and on my left-hand side I have our resident dome Svengali, Q Lazzarus, who also contributed to the soundtrack of that much-acclaimed movie, Silence of the Lambs.
Jonathan walked.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
My daughter coming home from school.
Yeah, who we see in the documentary, by the way.
Yes, she's a lot older now.
Oh yeah, right. She was quite.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was probably in 2022. So, well, she's not that much older. She's a lot bigger. She seems a lot older, but she's a lot bigger. Yeah.
How aware was she of the impact when you met her?
Mm-hmm.
Of that song and how people felt about it, and how did she know about the covers? Did she know about Jay and Silent Bob? Did she know about the whole Buffalo Bill memes and all of that stuff?
She did not. I mean, not initially. She wasn't on social media. She wasn't really, like on computer. I mean, she had internet sort of on her phone, but she wasn't really like. It's something we really started with her son James. She really started looking into and sort of going down that whole rabbit hole when we started filming. And, I mean, all of us, but especially her, were really shocked at not only how much the song Goodbye Horses had blown up sort of in the 25 years since she sort of went off the grid, being used in, I mean, not just like Grand Theft Auto and Clerks and Gucci commercials and Family Guy and, but also had been covered by like 20 bands, some of them quite big bands like MGMT, and so the song had developed this huge cult following, which it didn't have, when she first sang it, of course, or even shortly after. And then also there was all this speculation online as to what had happened to her, which was also quite interesting to her. So that was also part of why she decided at that moment that she was going to go back to her music. She had raised her son. He was sort of almost done with college. So she was like, well, maybe why I can go back to focusing on myself and my dream. And also she said, now there's really interest in me and my music that there wasn't, when I sort of gave up on my dream in the mid-90s. But yeah, her and her son James really, he realized that, as he says in the film, he realized the song was kind of important when he heard it in, playing a video game like Grand Theft Auto, or it was also in, I think, Skate 3 or something. But yeah, she was not aware of it.
Wow.
How much
And by the way,
control did she
James
have
is,
over her
I like,
music?
I'm sorry, wait,
Sorry,
real quick, Grayson. James, I really enjoyed him in it. He seems like a really good young man. And how old is he?
He is now 28, I believe. Yeah, I think he was born in 1997. So yeah, 28.
Go ahead, Gray. Sorry.
Yeah, I was wondering how much control that they have of their music now and then, because it's like it with all of those rights now moving over to things like Grand Theft Auto, etc. That this has become so popular, as well as also some of her other music from there. How much control did she actually have at that point in time, or was it more like an Alana Miles case where she lost control of Black Velvet?
Well, so now, all her London music is now copywritten, in her name, and also she did that, and also the music she made with her good friend Danny Z, which is like he was, he copywrote it in both of their names back in the day, which was, but Bill Garvey, who she did Goodbye Horses with, did not do that. And so, it's sort of addressed a lot in the film, the fact that the song has this huge cult following, and there were various people that made money off it, and, her family never got a cent for it, other than what Jonathan Demme paid her to use it in the 2 movies, which would have been sort of a one-time fee, probably. So that battle is continuing. James, her son, who runs the estate, is still trying to sort of get some publishing rights, some shared publishing rights for her, and then also royalties. Because she never even got royalties for being the artist who sings it.
Right.
So yeah, so it's the film. One of the reasons she wanted to do the film was also just to tell that whole story, and shine a light on not only the other music she created, but also the fact that she never got anything for this song that, she's the, if she wasn't the one singing it, and if she hadn't met John, if she was, if it wasn't sung with that amazing, powerful voice of hers and her melodies, and if she hadn't gotten into, met Jonathan Demme and given him the tape, that song probably would have wound up in the garbage. Like, no one would know it exists. So
and also the iconic spatial type beat or whatever, that was her that came up with it. That was her.
The melodies and the so and she was the face of she's in the video, she's the artist, connected to the song is her.
Mhm.
It's her name. So yeah, the whole thing, she was definitely done wrong by many people,
It's
when it
so
comes to
sad.
that song. Yeah.
It's so sad. And thank you, by the way, for doing this, because I think it's so important for these stories to get told.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't make this film, we don't really know about any of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that you were able to be in her life at the end of her life,
Mm-hmm.
it's a treat, because I think I said this to you 5 years ago. There was very little about Q Lazzarus, besides that she's missing, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's a ton of stuff that is available in your great documentary. So thank you for being smart enough to realize that I need to do this. You know what I mean? And
Well,
thank
and to
the
figure out that it
heavens
was
that
her.
it happened. Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
but because you were the right person to be put in there, because it could have been another filmmaker who might have been just, it could have been Ken Burns, and he would have been
Yeah.
like, oh, that's cool, I met the person who sings the Goodbye Horses. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that
I
you
mean, I was blessed. I was really blessed to cross paths with her and meet her and to be entrusted with her story, which is just
you seem like you guys
incredible.
became
You
pretty
know,
good friends, would you
we
say?
we did become very, very good friends, and the 3 years that we spent together making this film and just being friends, were
How often
life
did you
changing
shoot?
for me, and they also, happened to coincide with the pandemic and Black Lives Matters, and there was a lot going on in the world
How
during this
often
time as
did you
well.
shoot the documentary?
Well,
Was
we were shooting for 3 years together.
mhm.
So we started, September 2019, and then she passed away July 2022. And then I continued filming after that. That's when I did like all the interviews with her bandmates in England and stuff like that, which originally, obviously I was going to film her with them, them sort of reuniting after 25 years. And we were waiting to go to England together, but it was the pandemic, and obviously 2020 was the worst of it, but even 2021, like people were barely getting vaccinated that summer, and things didn't really open up until 2022, and that's when she started also having these medical things. So it was just just lots of very unfortunate events that happened, sort of one
Can,
after the other.
Would
can
you
you
do a follow-up one with James now that if he's continuing on her legacy with the band?
I mean, he's in the film a lot. I mean, I don't know if I would want to do another film about Q without her in it,
right, yeah.
And
Um
I think I found most of the archival that exists of her. I mean, there might be something else out there that,
can you speak
but
to what was available to her, if she were still here, as far as opportunities like performances and stuff? Because it seemed like from the documentary that she was about, like, if the pandemic doesn't happen, she would have been on stage and she would have had a lot of opportunities. Was there opportunities?
yeah. So the plan was the film was going to end with her comeback concert. So it was going to be her return to the stage after, almost 30 years, her reuniting with her original bandmates. And there was already the plan to put out, a record, her first record, which was going to be sort of an anthology of her music, which did come out. It's the soundtrack to the film. It has all 22 tracks that we hear in the film. And Sacred Bones Records put it out, and it has, her collaborations with Bill Garvey, with Danny Z, with her band in London, and some other songs that she did on her own. So she knew that there was going to be the record, and we were going to do the concert, but it was very important for her for people to hear the story of why she disappeared, and everything, and just everything that she talks about in the film, just all of her experiences, also, with Goodbye Horses, all of it, her, all her experiences with the music industry. She really wanted people to hear these stories from her in her own words, in the context, to know how one thing led to another, so that they wouldn't judge her, they wouldn't judge her for her addiction, for her legal issues, just things that, if you sort of hear about them out of context, it was very important to her to explain to people, yes, all of this happened, and this is why it happened, and this is how it happened, and she wanted to get all of that out there before she went back to performing.
Right. Because if you don't tell
she
your
wanted
story,
people to watch the film, and then she wanted to like start working on some new music and maybe start touring and performing. The concert that we were going to do for the film, it was going to be more for the film, obviously with people that she knew from her past and everything, but it wasn't going to be like, advertised in, Ticketmaster, and anyone could go, and, it was going to be like done for the film and filmed. And then after that, she was going to go back to performing for the public. But tragically, none of it happened. So.
Yeah, because if you don't tell your story, then others will tell your story, and then you're subject to whatever that comes about. So I was glad that she did that. That she had a chance to do that before she passed away. And we'll talk briefly about it. I don't, obviously, I want people to see the film, so there's some things I won't expound on as far as so they can go see the film, especially about some of the stuff about what happened in between 93 until 2019. But one thing though I definitely do want to talk about is there's some great moments in the documentary, and one moment that I thought was so cool was and this was totally organic, when you guys are driving by her church, and then the ladies, that was so cool. Like, if you could talk about it a little briefly about that I thought that was so great. As someone who grew up in the church myself.
These are the nice surprises when you're making documentaries. The bad surprises are, like all the bad things that happen that aren't planned, and the things that you want to do and you're planning to do and don't, and but then there's the unexpected things. So we were just, she grew up singing in her church, a Baptist church in New Jersey, and it was a Sunday, and we were filming there, and she said, okay, let's go to the church. So I want to show you the church. And the plan was just to film it from the outside and maybe go inside and film the inside, So we got there, and the church was actually closed, but there were these women that were in the parking lot, sort of on their way out, who had just been there for the Sunday mass, and they immediately recognized her. And they were all these ladies that she had grown up with, that were friends of her mother's and her father's, and so she has a really lovely exchange with them, sort of outside of the church, and so that was just a nice moment in her hometown with people from her past that was unexpected.
Yeah, and then you see her sister is in there prominently. Of course, her husband, as well as her son. And one aspect that I want to talk about is a little bit about her time in London. But before we get there, one thing about her that is so striking is her eyes. Her eyes are very striking, and I noticed that people would talk about it too in the documentary. She was a very beautiful woman. But when she went to London, and there's a big history of Black musicians, especially going to London, like a lot of the jazz musicians. back in the day, went to the UK, France, as well as the UK, and
Tina Turner.
Tina Turner, right?
Yeah.
So one thing I just missed it or whatnot. It was when she went there. Did she go there just like? Did she have anything set up, or was it just I'm going there and I'm just gonna make it happen? Well, how did that?
Yeah, no, she didn't have anything set up. I mean, her friend, she had a friend there, but it was really Billy. I'm sorry, it's so noisy in the background here.
It's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah, she was having trouble getting a record deal in the United States, and she was really she she had, as she talks about in the film, she had a lot of different influences and she liked all types of music. So while she was doing some stuff like Goodbye Horses, which was more new wave and sort of 80s, she really loved hard rock and she really loved rock and roll, and she went to London and had a band there, which not only was rock and roll, it was like hard rock, and she felt that maybe in London they would appreciate her more and should be more likely to get a record deal. Unfortunately, it was she came up against sort of the same sort of walls and stereotyping and like why like people I mean, it's as we know it's ridiculous because rock and roll was invented by African Americans, but in the 80s, which was a very superficial sort of materialistic time,
big hair,
people were very kind of narrow-minded, and they're like, well, she should be doing R&B or like Whitney Houston or this and that, like I guess sort of metal and hard rock at that point were considered more like white genres. So she was just ahead of her time. She wasn't doing what anyone was expecting her to be, what she was expected to be doing, and I think now that's something that's kind of celebrated with artists, like if you're doing something unique. But back then it was like there was very formulaic, especially with the record companies. So
we
but
don't know
she
how
definitely went there with the hope that things were going to be different, and I think they were a little better for her there, but at the end of the day, she still didn't get the record deal that she wanted. Yeah.
Was she offered a record deal and not?
No record deal.
She
didn't get a record deal, but she had a band and she played a lot of shows, and I think she had fans and stuff, but she had a manager, but
she definitely was ahead of her time in terms of that, because it's like with YouTube today, they wouldn't have helped but assign her on if this would have been now in this generation.
Yeah, it's very, very unfortunate. Well, I have to say, like I said, this film is fantastic. When did you actually complete the film?
I finished the film just over a year ago.
Okay.
So it had its premiere at a festival in October 2024. And then it had a theatrical premiere in the US and UK in March in some theaters. And then it had its streaming premiere it's on Criterion Channel now, streaming on Criterion Channel, and it's also available to sort of rent or buy on Amazon.
That's how
in the US and Canada. Yeah.
Is it can you buy a Blu-ray or?
There's no DVD or Blu-ray release. As
or am I just old school? I still have Blu-ray.
I still VHS tapes.
Oh,
my VHS collection, my DVD collection, but no, hopefully there will be one. It's just not in the works yet, I guess.
Is there a plan
wanna,
at all to re-release the any of her materials beyond just the compilation album? That they might be able to mix the documentary in with that compilation album.
Well, so the record that came out is on vinyl, it's on CD, it's digital. There's more music that has not been released that James, her son, will release eventually, but there's no sort of date or for that yet. Yeah.
Mm.
I think, since it's a limited amount of material, they don't really want to do it all at once, it's sort
Yeah.
flood the market. Yeah.
of, yeah.
Are they
Okay.
working towards also getting it onto also more radio stations for play and stuff like that to be able to actually repopularize the music?
I mean, I'm not really sure, like what the record label is doing. I mean, I think, there was definitely a lot of, there was publicity done in February when the record came out. Yeah.
And are they thinking of possibly attaching the documentary to the release?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because it's the soundtrack to the film.
Yes, the soundtrack to the movie.
Yeah. So they'll always be married.
Right.
In that sense. Yeah.
Briefly, I do want to talk about her death. She was having a hip surgery, right?
She had a hip replacement surgery and she was recovering from it, and she fell and broke her leg.
Right.
And then got sepsis in the hospital.
And from I remember in the documentary it said that it was definitely it was preventable what happened to her. And is there any lawsuit at all with the hospital?
There's not, because I mean, a 61-year-old woman should not break her leg and then never come home,
Right.
in New York City. And she didn't have, any big health problems when she went in there. I think it's the lawsuit. There's no lawsuit. There's sort of two reasons why. One, she was in the hospital for about a month and a half, and then she was in like a rehab for about a month and a half, learning how to walk again. So it's not really clear where the infection started. But also I think, everyone in her family, like everyone was just so devastated. Nobody really wanted to sort of deal with that,
Right. Yeah, I'm telling you, because I knew she had passed in 22.
Mm-hmm.
And as it was getting closer, when you said it was the year 22, and I'm like, she looks fine, because I wasn't sure what happened to her.
Mm-hmm.
I just knew that she had passed away, so I thought maybe she had cancer or something like that. And then as it was getting closer and closer to July in the documentary, I'm like, she looks fine. So what happened?
Yeah.
I'm like, what happened? And then when I found out what happened, I mean, I had to fight back the tears. It was so sad. And so, man, and like that's why I said thank you for doing this, because we wouldn't have had this document that you did. So I definitely want to thank you for once again for making this great documentary. And going forward,
So what's new in the hopper for you?
Huh?
So what is the next steps of new in the hopper for you and your current journey with this? Do you have any new projects coming up also?
Well, with this film, we're just trying to, just get it seen as much as possible at this point. Because so much of her legacy now depends on this film. When we were making the film and she was still alive, it was just so she could tell her story and sort of get her career going again and all of this. Hopefully right some wrongs. Once she passed away, the responsibility making this film, became a lot larger because she wasn't going to do any more interviews. She wasn't going to make any more music. Her speaking in this film was going to be the way most people got to know her, So, it's about people come to the film because they love the song, Goodbye Horses. But the film is about so much more than that. And it's not just about Q Lazzarus, it's about Diane Lucky. Q Lazzarus was sort of 10 years of her life, 85 to 95 when she was making music. So the idea is for as many people as possible to get to know her story, what an amazing woman she was, not just amazing talent that never got her due, the attention and recognition she deserved during her life. But also, great storyteller, great sense of humor, great style, like just a wonderful woman, and next for me is another film about another amazing woman, but it's a biopic. So it's sort of a fictionalized version of a real story with actors. And that's about Maria Sabina, who was a Mazatec indigenous woman who would heal people in her community with hallucinogenic mushrooms. So it's sort of her life story. And I met her as a child. I was very lucky to meet her when I was 8 years old. And she made an impression. And so we're sort of in the casting process now for that film. And hopefully we'll be shooting in Mexico next year. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm looking forward to
Nice.
that. We got to have you back on to talk about it when it comes out. One question I didn't ask you, and I'm gonna smack myself for not asking. Can you explain Q Lazzarus, the name?
Yeah. So, well, she talks about it a bit in the film, but Q, I guess, is for Kiana, which is sort of a name that she liked. Like she was Diana, and it was sort of Kiana, and then Lazarus, was obviously a biblical reference. The man who rose from the dead that Christ resurrected from
the first zombie.
Yeah, exactly. And I did not have, this song was not in the tapes that she gave me to digitize, and which we wound up putting some in the movie and on the record and stuff. But I guess there was a song, one of the early Q Lazzarus songs from New York in the 80s was called Woke from the Dead. And it was sort of about Lazarus. So I think maybe she chose the name around the time she was writing that song. But I've never heard the song.
Oh, okay.
I don't know who has the song, like if it was lost or what happened to it.
Well, thank you so much for coming on our program.
Thank you so much for having me. Sorry about the doorbells and the barking in the background.
So how do people get in touch with you, to follow you, to see what your future project is, and to also like get a huge encouragement on these actual on the Q Lazzarus documentary, and also following the journey?
Well, I'm on Instagram at Eva Aridjis Fuentes. Q Son James, the official Q Lazzarus account, is at Real Q Lazzarus. The record's on Sacred Bones, at Sacred Bones. The film's on Amazon, Vimeo, and Criterion. Yeah, I guess I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, under my name. So if anyone wants to follow me,
hey, that's how I found you.
Yeah, there's also an official website for the film, which is goodbyehorsesmovie.com, and there's sort of any screenings are listed there. Press, you can buy T-shirts with the movie poster. Yeah, you can contact me through the website. So Real Q Lazzarus. Real Q Lazzarus is James's Instagram account, and goodbyehorsesmovie.com is my website for the movie.
And what about you, Gray? How can we get you?
Well, we can stalk me on LinkedIn. We can stalk me on now Instagram. Yes, I did actually adult to do Instagram. Also on Facebook, as well as also on Pat's Lives Productions Inc.com, and you can check out the website, as well as also my new site as well on Bot Builders as well. That you can do that. And basically, as I've said to people, if you can't find me, you're not just stalking me hard enough.
All right. And you can get me at Kinte Ferguson on Instagram. We have some programs here at Indie Radio coming up. We're going to do episode 3 and 4 of Welcome to Dairy. We're going to talk about. And also, we're doing a new show called Television Autopsy, where we go over TV shows that did their run. And our first episode will be Game of Thrones. So
My favorite show ever.
Yeah, so we're going to go over that whole series. It should be a lot of fun. And of course, we have our Horror Flicks and Chill that's coming up as well. So a lot of great programming coming up. And thank you once again. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, Kinte and Grace.
Take care. And thank you so much, Eva. It's like, that was amazing.